The Door into Summer by Robert A. Heinlein. 1. One winter shortly before the 6 Weeks' War, my tomcat Petronius the Arbiter and I lived in an old farmhouse in Connecticut. I doubt if it is there any longer, as it was near the edge of the blast area of the Manhattan near-miss, and those old frame buildings burn like tissue paper. Even if it is still standing, it would not be a desirable rental because of the fallout. But we liked it then, Pete and I. The lack of plumbing made the rent low, and what had been the dining room had a good north light for my drafting board. The drawback was that the place had 11 doors to the outside. 12 if you counted Pete's door. I always tried to arrange a door of his own for Pete, in this case a board fitted into a window in an unused bedroom, and in which I had cut a cat strainer just wide enough for Pete's whiskers. I have spent too much of my life opening doors for cats. I once calculated that since the dawn of civilization, 978 man-centuries have been used up that way. I could show you the figures. Pete usually used his own door except when he could bully me into opening a people door for him, which he preferred. But he would not use his door when there was snow on the ground. While still a kitten, all fluff and buzzes, Pete had worked out a simple philosophy. I was in charge of quarters, rations, and weather. He was in charge of everything else. But he held me especially responsible for the weather. Connecticut winters are good only for Christmas cards. Regularly that winter Pete would check his own door, refuse to go out it because of that unpleasant white stuff beyond it. He was no fool. Then badger me to open a people door. He had a fixed conviction that at least one of them must lead into summer weather. Each time this meant that I had to go around with him to each of 11 doors, hold it open while he satisfied himself that it was winter out that way too, then go on to the next door, while his criticisms of my mismanagement grew more bitter with each disappointment. Then he would stay indoors until hydraulic pressure utterly forced him outside. When he returned, the ice in his pads would sound like little clogs on the wooden floor, and he would glare at me and refuse to purr until he had chewed it all out, whereupon he would forgive me until the next time. But he never gave up his search for the door into summer. On 3 December 1970, I was looking for it too. My quest was about as hopeless as Pete's had been in a Connecticut January. What little snow there was in Southern California was kept on mountains for skiers, not in downtown Los Angeles. The stuff probably couldn't have pushed through the smog anyway. But the winter weather was in my heart. I was not in bad health, aside from a cumulative hangover. I was still on the right side of 30 by a few days, and I was far from being broke. No police were looking for me, nor any husbands, nor any process servers. There was nothing wrong that a slight case of amnesia would not have cured. But there was winter in my heart, and I was looking for the door to summer. If I sound like a man with an acute case of self-pity, you are correct. There must have been well over 2 billion people on this planet in worse shape than I was. Nevertheless, I was looking for the door into summer. Most of the ones I had checked lately had been swinging doors, like the pair in front of me then. The Sans Souci Bar Grill, the sign said. I went in, picked a booth halfway back, placed the overnight bag I was carrying carefully on the seat, slid in by it, and waited for the waiter. The overnight bag said, "Wah?" I said, "Take it easy, Pete." "No." "Nonsense. You just went. Pipe down, the waiter is coming." Pete shut up. I looked up as the waiter leaned over the table and said to him, "A double shot of your bar scotch, a glass of plain water, and a split of ginger ale." The waiter looked upset. "Ginger ale, sir? With scotch?" "Do you have it, or don't you?" "Why, yes, of course, but—" "Then fetch it. I'm not going to drink it. I just want to sneer at it. And bring a saucer, too." "As you say, sir." He polished the tabletop. "How about a small steak, sir? Or the scallops are very good today." "Look, mate, I'll tip you for the scallops if you'll promise not to serve them. All I need is what I ordered. And don't forget the saucer." He shut up and went away. I told Pete again to take it easy. The Marines had landed. The waiter returned, his pride appeased by carrying the split of ginger ale on the saucer. I had him open it while I mixed the scotch with the water. "Would you like another glass for the ginger ale, sir?" "I'm a real buckaroo. I drink it out of the bottle." He shut up and let me pay him and tip him, not forgetting a tip for the scallops. When he had gone, I poured ginger ale into the saucer and tapped on the top of the overnight bag. "Soup's on, Pete." It was unzipped. I never zipped it with him inside. He spread it with his paws, poked his head out, looked around quickly, then levitated his forequarters and placed his front feet on the edge of the table. I raised my glass and we looked at each other. "Here's to the female race, Pete. Find 'em and forget 'em." He nodded. It matched his own philosophy perfectly. He bent his head daintily and started lapping up ginger ale. "If you can, that is," I added, and took a deep swig. Pete did not answer. Forgetting a female was no effort to him. He was the natural-born bachelor type. Facing me through the window of the bar was a sign that kept changing. First it would read, "Work while you sleep." Then it would say, "And dream your troubles away." Then it would flash in letters twice as big, "Mutual Assurance Company." I read all three several times without thinking about them. I knew as much and as little about suspended animation as everybody else did. I had read a popular article or so when it was first announced, and 2 or 3 times a week I'd get an insurance company ad about it in the morning mail. I usually chucked them without looking at them, since they didn't seem to apply to me any more than lipstick ads did. In the first place, until shortly before then, I could not have paid for cold sleep. It's expensive. In the second place, why should a man who was enjoying his work, was making money, expected to make more, was in love and about to be married, commit semi-suicide? If a man had an incurable disease and expected to die anyhow, but thought the doctors a generation later might be able to cure him, and he could afford to pay for suspended animation while medical science caught up with what was wrong with him, then cold sleep was a logical bet. Or if his ambition was to make a trip to Mars and he thought that clipping one generation out of his personal movie film would enable him to buy a ticket, I suppose that was logical too. There had been a news story about a Cafe Society couple who got married and went right straight from City Hall to the sleep sanctuary of Western World Insurance Company with an announcement that they had left instructions not to be called until they could spend their honeymoon on an interplanetary liner. Although I had suspected that it was a publicity gag rigged by the insurance company and that they had ducked out the back door under assumed names. Spending your wedding night cold as a frozen mackerel does not have the ring of truth in it. And there was the usual straightforward financial appeal, the one the insurance companies bore down on. Work while you sleep. Just hold still and let whatever you have saved grow into a fortune. If you are 55 and your retirement fund pays you $200 a month, why not sleep away the years, wake up still 55, and have it pay you $1,000 a month? To say nothing of waking up in a bright new world, which would probably promise you a much longer and healthier old age in which to enjoy the $1,000 a month. That one they really went to town on, each company proving with incontrovertible figures that its selection of stocks for its trust fund made more money faster than any of the others. Work while you sleep. It had never appealed to me. I wasn't 55, I didn't want to retire, and I hadn't seen anything wrong with 1970. Until recently, that is to say. Now I was retired whether I liked it or not. I didn't. Instead of being on my honeymoon, I was sitting in a second-rate bar drinking scotch purely for anesthesia. Instead of a wife, I had one much-scarred tomcat with a neurotic taste for ginger ale. And as for liking right now, I would have swapped it for a case of gin, then busted every bottle. But I wasn't broke.